Well, another loss in the books for the Vancouver Canucks, going back below 500, losing their second straight game after a rough performance against the Wild just a couple of nights ago. 2-1, Philadelphia taking down Vancouver here on Thursday, October 28th. Not an ideal one, but we'll break it down here, so let's do that. So it's Yaroslav Halak in net for the Vancouver Canucks, Martin Jones in net for the Canucks, and Halak, who looked a little shaky to start his first performance of the year, looked a lot better tonight, and Martin Jones looked a lot better than he should have. We go into the first period with Justin Bailey in the game with Elias Pettersson and Höglander to start the game. We had Vasily Podkolzin playing with Miller and Besser. We had Jack Rathbone out of the lineup for Brad Hunt. And in the first period, the Canucks defense just fails right off the bat. A 2-on-1, 22 seconds into the game, results in Sean Couturier firing one past Halak to make it 1-0 on the first shot of the game. They then almost score again just 1 minute later. Another odd man rush. The puck sneaks through Halak, but this time stays out. Luckily for the Canucks, they're not in a huge hole to start this game. And then they tie it up quickly. The Canucks do answer here. It's Quinn Hughes with a shot from the point. It catches iron, it hits the back of Martin Jones and goes in. So the Canucks have now still only been able to score against Philadelphia with some weirdly fluky goals. There was about 3 of them the last time they played. The one goal the Canucks had this game also being the same. Then Quinn Hughes goes out and takes a bad penalty. And then the Flyers score immediately after. A really sick bank pass by Claude Giroux goes off the backboards. A backdoor tap-in makes it 2-1 for the Flyers. And it's just not looking good defensively. But Tanner Pearson almost ties it, gets the bar on a odd man rush down the left-hand side. Canucks get some decent sustained pressure, but then Joel Farabee gets a high danger chance the other way. And basically the first period was a disaster. Shots were 15-4 for Philadelphia after one period. The score was 2-1. Canucks are still alive in this game, but they need to get it sorted out. And luckily they do in the second period. We had a scrap between Luke Schenn and former Canuck Zach McEwen. McEwen gets the extra 2 minutes for grabbing the visor. Great fight, though. But that one gets killed off. The Canucks then get another power play. Also fails, but it looked a little better, at least here. And then we get the surprise line of the night, which was Yohu Lamiko and Matthew Highmore being 2 of the best players on the ice for the Canucks. But they get some really good chances with about 6.5 minutes to go in the second period, but they can't capitalize. And then at this point, look back, shots were 18-4 Philadelphia at one point. Now they're 19-18 for Vancouver. 15 straight shots here, but unable to beat Martin Jones. Highmore then has another great chance in tight, a Justin Bailey setup, and then his stick gets slashed right out of his hands. No call is made. Then immediately after, they call Horvat for a pretty weak interference call at center ice, a call that the Canucks would not get in return in the third period when the same thing happened to Elias Pettersson, but we'll get to that. Period comes to an end. Shots are 20-20. So basically the Canucks dominated the second in the same way that they failed in the first period. Third period, we lose Matthew Highmore. He's not on the bench to start the period. He had been one of the best Canucks players tonight. He didn't return. We'll get to that later after the recap here. Then Höglander takes a high sticking penalty literally right off the faceoff, something you cannot do to start a period when you're down a goal. That gets killed off. Then the Canucks get a power play. That gets killed off. Then JVR Tripp gives the Canucks another power play. And then Elias Pettersson takes a bad penalty at center ice, gets a holding penalty. Kind of ticky-tack, but it's a penalty that you can't give the ref the option to call. You did put your hand on his hip. They are going to call that a lot of the time. So 4-on-4, though, the Canucks do dominate. We have Tyler Myers getting a great chance off of a really nice play from Brock Besser. Can't beat Jones. Then the Flyers power play leads to a bunch of chances the other way that comes off of it. And then there's that obvious missed call on Elias Pettersson with just a few minutes to go. Very similar to that Horvat play, but of course the time on the clock apparently makes a difference in what is a penalty or not. Different game scenario means different things get called. The Canucks take Halak to the bench with 1:40 to go. Delayed penalty for Philadelphia results in a Brock Besser chance that if he was able to just get this puck up off a really nice feed from Garland, it is a totally different story. And then they cannot score on the 6-on-4 for about 80 seconds in the end of this game. So our pluses, our minuses. You guys think we should start with the minuses tonight? I think we should start with the minuses tonight. I'm going to add another one here. The first minus was the defense, and especially early. The defense has been sloppy, and it has been sloppy a lot this year. So many odd man rushes so far this season. We've seen them every game. We saw them a lot on Tuesday against Minnesota. We saw quite a few of them tonight for Philadelphia. And it's so easy for games to get out of hand if you're giving up these odd man rushes constantly. Another minus is the penalty troubles the Canucks ran into. I think they had 5 penalties tonight, which is too many penalties. You're going to get, I mean, they got 5 power plays as well, but you should try to capitalize on those and not take bad penalties in return. But 5 penalties is just too much, especially this Flyers power play is really interesting. They're doing cool stuff. That Giroux bank pass was absolutely sick. But you can't be giving these teams these opportunities to go out there and capitalize on the power play against you. The first period is an obvious minus, right? The first period, the Canucks were awful. They were just straight up awful in the first period. Like I said, shots were 15-4. Play was in the Canucks zone the entire time. But it was just terrible. They made Martin Jones look good. That's something that you shouldn't do. Martin Jones is not a good goaltender, but they made him look like a good goaltender tonight. He stopped 27 of 28 shots. Didn't feel like a lot were very high danger, though. There was a couple, especially a couple late ones in the third period, but in the first and second, nothing really high danger. I mean, the one goal that goes in goes off of the post and then the goalie and in. So they really didn't beat the goalie all night. The biggest minus, though, your best players didn't show up. The Canucks have players that need to show up in these games. They need to make a difference in these 1-goal games. These are the guys you rely on to go out and put a good performance on. The obvious one's Elias Pettersson. Again, he looks lost out there. And again, after the third game, after the fourth game, after the fifth game, I'm out here saying, look, he's a good enough player that we can't be too worried about it. He will bounce back. However, we're now 8 games into the season. We are 10% of the way through the season at this point. He needs to be better, and he needs to be better soon, because these games, losing 2-1 here, losing by a goal against the Wild the other night, these are games that, having someone like Elias Pettersson performing at his best, these can swing these games. These are points that are being left on the table by the Canucks because they can't score when they need to, and someone like Elias Pettersson being able to score would be huge for that. Connor Garland didn't have a great game tonight. Bo Horvat, who I'm not going to give too much grief on because he was excellent the last 2 games, 3 goals in the past 2 games, but he wasn't very good tonight, except in the face-off circle. I don't know what his actual face-off numbers were, but he seemed to win them all. He was only 57%, but I think he took like 22 face-offs tonight. But still, your best players have to be better. They didn't show up. I wonder, is Connor Garland shaving his beard an issue here, right? He goes out, he's been excellent all year, he shaves his beard, and he wasn't good tonight. So maybe that was a big mistake on his part, but we'll never know. The next loss, the next minus is a big one here. The bottom 6 is in absolute shambles. The Canucks top 6 hasn't been, or at least in these losses, like the game against Buffalo, the game against Minnesota, this one tonight, the top 6 has not been capitalizing. And it's why we've seen guys like Podkolzin getting shots in the top 6 and Pettersson moving down to play with Highmore. But now the Canucks bottom 6 is just in absolute shambles. Matthew Highmore out tonight with an injury. I don't have an update on him yet, but the fact that he got ruled out pretty quickly early in the third period, probably, not a great sign. Justin Dowling is injured. Tyler Mott, we still don't have any updates on. Jason Dickinson is injured. Brandon Sutter is out for a long time, it seems. So this is 5 important players in the Canucks bottom 6 that are out, and now they're going to need guys to step up. Whether it's Justin Bailey, who I thought did fine tonight, had a couple of good chances. Maybe guys like Nick Patan might be getting looks, especially, with these guys who go in and have been playing center. Nick Patan could be a guy to get a look, and there's a bunch of others, but the Canucks are going to need guys to come in and fill that bottom six when, the Canucks have already struggled on the defensive side of the ice and on the penalty kill. They think they're allowing a power play goal basically every game at this point, and losing guys that can kill penalties like Highmore, Mott, and Dickinson especially, and Brandon Sutter. That's basically 4 of your good penalty killers that are all out with injury. So that's my minuses. There was a lot of them for good reason in this one because the Canucks really didn't play well. But we do have some pluses. The first one is the Canucks bounced back after a terrible first period. They could have had that first period down a goal and have given up, 15 to 4 in shots, had the puck in their end the entire time. And they could have just gone out and quit. But they didn't. They tried to come back. They went out and they did the exact same thing to Philadelphia in the following period, which I thought was excellent. They went out and they at least they were the better team in the second period and they were the better team in the third period, but they were the much better team in the second period, but they were the much worse team in the first period. If you look at expected goals share, the Canucks were the better team in that regard, 56%. But if you got to score to make those count, right? The analytics can only do so much for you if you can't find the back of the net. I thought Yaroslav Halak looked all right. He was fine. He let in that 1 goal early on, but hey, maybe you shouldn't be allowing a shot 22 seconds into the game. That's really high danger from the faceoff dot, with a guy who has a good shot. He allowed 2 goals on 28 shots. He did fine. He was fine. Lamico and Highmore I have in my pluses. Now, of course, there's the minus of Highmore now being injured. Hopefully he's not out long, but we do have, I thought Yohu Lamico and Matthew Highmore were the best players on the ice for the Canucks tonight. And this is my Canucks game puck now. We'll give it to Highmore, I think. But both of them played really well. And then I guess my last plus is they had lots of hits. I guess there was a lot of people early on in the season complaining, saying, oh, this team doesn't hit. That's the reason they're losing. Well, they hit tonight and they had 41 hits to Philadelphia's 13. But hitting doesn't win you games. Goals do. You need the goals on the scoreboard. Otherwise, you're not going to win. So those are my pluses for this one. Game pucks, we'll go Highmore for the Canucks. We'll go with Couturier for the Flyers. Could also give it to Martin Jones, although I don't think Jones was excellent tonight. He made a couple really good saves. I don't think he was really tested that much though. So he did fine, but I think Couturier earns it here. All right. Let's put the notes off to the side. Let's take some of your questions. And I will, hopefully they come up and work here. We have a lot of people sick of the coaching staff. We have Last Resort 318 saying I'm sick of the coaching staff. We have Kango saying fire Benning. We have quite a few negative opinions against the coach. And again, I went over this after the game against Buffalo, and I said, I don't know enough about coaching to define whether or not a coach is doing bad or not. However, this is a game that the Canucks got absolutely dominated in the first period, and they couldn't score after that. And it's been a bit of a trend. So without me saying, I think they should fire Travis Green, for example, because I don't know. I honestly don't know what impact that would have on the room. And I don't know who you would replace Travis Green with at this point. However, my focus would be more on when would that happen, right? What has to happen to the Canucks this season for them to make a big move, a major move like that in firing a head coach? The Canucks are 3-4-1 right now. And again, there are, teams who are doing worse. But if we take a look at the standings, we look at the Pacific Division, the Canucks are now in 5th. They are tied with Seattle, who looks not very good. They are 1 point ahead of Vegas, but Vegas has 1 less game played. Vegas is going to be better. They're behind San Jose, Edmonton, Calgary. Now, I see San Jose coming down, Vegas going up, but if the Canucks are basically in a battle for 4th in the Pacific Division, that means they're basically in a battle for a wild card spot. because fourth doesn't guarantee you the playoffs. So you're also then competing with the Central Division. If the wheels come off, which, I'm not going to say they've started to, because the Canucks went out and they had a 2-game losing streak, Detroit and Buffalo, and then they came back and had 2 really good games against Seattle and Chicago. However, now they've lost 2 more again. Now, if they lose like the next 3 games and the Canucks are 3-7-1, then I think you're getting to that territory where a change gets made. And that part of that would be Jim Benning knowing that he needs to make the playoffs this year for his job security. And part of that comes down to ownership having a lot of money riding on this, right? This game was, like, I looked, there were a lot of tickets available for this game, second game of the season. I'm sure Saturday will be a different story on a weekend, but ownership wants to sell tickets. Ownership wants a full building in the playoffs because there's a lot of money in the playoffs. We're talking millions of dollars each playoff game. I think Green's leash will be shortening, especially with lots of the fan backlash that's coming through. Now, I'm not going to go, like I said, I'm not going to go out and say that the Canucks should fire Green or they shouldn't fire Green, because frankly, I can look at it and I can say, there might be a bit of confirmation bias there and be like, oh, they're playing bad, it's the coach's fault. And then they go out and they play well and they're like, yeah, well, that's because the roster's good. And that's not on Travis, like it wasn't because of Travis Green, right? So it's really easy to pick and choose to support whichever side you're on, which is why I'm trying to sort of stay in the middle of it. Because honestly, I don't know. And I don't feel like coaches have that much of an impact other than like the systems they set up. But I feel like a lot of it comes down to, players performing. I don't think Elias Pettersson struggling right now is because of the coach. That's for sure. I think it's because of Elias Pettersson. I don't think Connor Garland having a bad night tonight was because of coaching. I think it was because he didn't play well tonight. And I think it's really easy to sort of dive into this rabbit hole of, well, they're losing, it's the coach's fault, because we've kind of been trained to think that way. Because that's always what happens. Team does bad, coach gets fired because they're just trying to change something. And yeah, I could see it happening fairly soon here if losses pile up. Now, if the Canucks go out and they win on Saturday and they win on Monday or Tuesday, I don't know what their schedule is, the Tuesday. So if they go out, they beat the Oilers Saturday, they beat the Rangers Tuesday, they beat the Predators Friday, and then the Canucks are, 5-4-2, and they're looking a little bit better, or whatever the record would be at that point, 6-4-2. Then, that leash expands again. I think there's going to sort of be like this floating bar where if the Canucks fall too far below that bar, that's like the cutoff point for Travis Green. So I think if the Canucks at any point are like 5 or 6 points out of the playoffs, then it gets a little, that leash gets really tight and that seat gets really hot for Travis Green. But again, I'm not an expert on that, on what coaching decisions should be made, but I do value all your opinions. And I like that you guys are passionate, that's for sure. And I think that is very important. We're going to scroll through here. I see a couple. I'm not going to pull up all the messages of people that I disagree with because I don't want it to feel like I'm calling you out, but there's a comment saying that Demko should have played tonight. I think there was a couple saying it shouldn't have been Halak, it should have been Demko. Halak allowed 2 goals on 28 shots. Sure, you might have wanted one of them back, but Halak did fine. Again, 2 goals on 28 shots. If the team in front of you isn't scoring 2 goals, there's not so much you can do as a goalie, right? You can steal a game, and we've seen Demko go out and steal games, which we haven't seen Halak do yet. But eventually you got to play the backup. You can't play Thatcher Demko 70 games a year. You can't do that anymore. Teams used to do that, and they used to run goalies into the ground, and then they'd be useless 2/3 of the way through the season. So Halak getting his second game in the 8th game of the season, I think, is a totally fair split, especially since the first one was a back-to-back anyways. The Canucks play Saturday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. Like, the Canucks don't have any back-to-backs until November 13th and 14th. So we might not see Halak for another 2.5 weeks, but he's got to play at some point. So I'm not too worried about Halak playing tonight. It's not like he let in 5 goals and lost the game immediately. He let in 2 goals and then held the door for the rest of the game. Crispy Assassin saying, I'm frustrated with their inability to score goals. They seem to be out of sync. Yeah, they do seem to be out of sync. I think that's really clear. Does that come down to lack of practice time as a unit with that road trip they had? Is it just lack of confidence where pucks are just bouncing off their stick? Look, I haven't played pro hockey. Obviously, I just play hockey recreationally, but I get into those. I get into those grooves where puck just doesn't work for me sometimes. Sometimes I'll have games where I can sort of do no wrong, and then there's other times where the puck just rolls off my stick every time I touch it. And that happens to these guys too. We see it with, Elias Pettersson right now. He'll try to make a simple pass and the puck just rolls off of his stick. It's just these little tiny timing things that sometimes your brain just isn't working on. Sonny saying, I'd be scared to think where the Canucks would be without Demko, OEL, Hughes, and Garland. Well, just look back a couple of years. The Canucks didn't have any of those guys, 3-4 years ago when Jason Megna was in the lineup. And yeah, they would be not good. I think that's pretty obvious. Let's see here. Yeah, lots of comments on Pettersson. Someone saying, let's be glad that Pettersson wasn't signed long-term. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to judge. Again, we have a lot of sample size to judge Elias Pettersson on that isn't these 8 games. How many NHL games does Elias Pettersson have? He's played 173 games. 8 bad ones isn't enough to write him off as a player. Again, this has been about 5% of his career, which actually sounds like a lot. But it's been a 20th of his career that he's played bad these last 8 games. And sure, you can say he was a little shaky last year as well. I'm not concerned for long-term Elias Pettersson. I don't think Elias Pettersson is going to fall off a cliff. However, I'm concerned about short-term Elias Pettersson if he doesn't improve quickly because of the impact it'll have on the team now. Because if they're losing games now and they fall to a playoff spot, then they're in trouble. But I'm not really worried about Elias Pettersson like 50 games from now to the future because I think he'll be fine. But right now it's rough. Let's keep scrolling here. Lots of stuff about Travis Green as well. Zach with an interesting take saying, honestly, Green needs to just leave the lines alone. Pick the lines and stick to it. That's the only way we're going to keep build cohesion. This is an interesting one. Travis Green is very quick to go to the line blender. However, it's also pretty quick to realize when things aren't working. We have, when a line just goes out on the ice and they fail and they're not clicking, then he goes out and he changes them quickly. I would rather someone who changes things. Actually, I don't know. This is a good question. Would you rather someone who makes changes too quickly or someone who doesn't make changes quickly enough, right? Would you prefer a Travis Green who goes out and the second something goes wrong, he makes a change? Or would you prefer someone like Willie Desjardins who holds lines together for an entire season? Everyone plays 15 to 17 minutes a night. And then even when you get to the playoffs, things don't change. And there's no improvising. There's no adapting. It's all sort of reactionary. There's no reaction or action. In Willie's case, Travis Green is just very reactionary. So it is sort of a pick your poison in that case. So how you doing? Asking about McEwen trying to rip Shen's helmet off. This is one of those ones where I get why it's a penalty and it should be a penalty. But it's almost like holding on for dear life at that point. He has a helmet on, you don't. You're just trying to hang on, I guess. I didn't see it as like very malicious, really. I think it deserves 2 minutes. That's fine. But I don't think player safety will get involved there. Kai saying, I don't understand Connor Garland only getting 10 minutes of ice time. Did he only get 10 minutes? That doesn't sound right to me. That sounds way too low. Connor Garland played 10 minutes and 37 seconds. Wow. That is low. That is surprising. I'm not sure why that is. I wonder if there was something in his game that Travis Green didn't like. He wasn't good when he was out there tonight. I think it was something like through the first two periods he was out there for, it was like a 22% Corsi, which is bad, right? That means that he was out when he was on the ice. 78% of the shots were on Philadelphia's side and not the Canucks side. But yeah, only 10 minutes is crazy. Mark is saying who won the fight, Shen or Mac? I'd say Shen, as he got more punches in there, even though he got tackled to the ice. Yep, I agree. He was winning the fight until the takedown, but that's fine. Nick saying that was probably the worst game that Pettersson has ever played. I don't know. He might have been worse a few nights ago. And we're gonna keep scrolling. Lots of comments that are very similar. BR saying it's just like Moneyball. GM just needs to make a few more moves. The thing is, to make moves, you have to find someone to make moves with. It's not like there hasn't been enough roster turnover this season. Like half the roster is different players. And you have to find a trading partner. And I don't know how big of a move you can make at this point, right? The team is 3-4-1. Are you going to go out and trade a first round pick to try to get an impact player to help the team recover? Well, if that fails, now you're at a first round pick in the lottery, potentially, which is just dangerous, right? Of course, you can protect it, but that lowers the value a lot. But we've talked a lot, especially on things like Canucks After Dark, my show that I do Monday nights. Go subscribe to that, by the way. We've talked a lot about how if the Canucks are in a position to compete when we come towards playoff time, then they'll probably go out and try to make a splash at the trade deadline, right? Go out, spend that first round pick, get an impact player to try to make the playoffs, compete and push. But at this point in the season, the Canucks got to get there first. The Canucks have to be in that position like they were when they made the Toffoli trade. They were in a playoff spot and they were going to make the playoffs that year, although they did fall off before the COVID break. But right now, I don't know what moves you're making to try to improve the team. Rod, did you notice Besser saying why to Green on the bench, then shaking his head and rolling his eyes? I did not see that. I'd like to get a clip of it. I wonder if that's on the Canucks subreddit. I do want to see that because that seems like a bad sign. Seems like one of those things that would be on the top of the Reddit, but it's not right now. But if I see that, I will take a look at it for sure. Halak was fine. Cam saying, I think Miller should be traded at the deadline if they're out. This is an interesting one because, yes, he's the oldest of the core, basically. But that's a very scary thing because he's a really good hockey player. And the Canucks are in win now mode, whether it's this year or the next year or the next year. They're trying to build a playoff team. And removing JT Miller really makes that hard to do. You can look at it sort of from like take a step back and look at it and say, okay, maybe in the long term, that is the best move. And in that case, I might not disagree. However, I don't think this management group is going to go out and do that because I think they know that anything you trade for JT Miller is probably going to be worse than JT Miller. And it's probably not going to help your team as much in the short term at the very least. Leo saying, I feel like the team's underperforming. I think everyone sort of agrees on that here. And yeah, on paper, I think it is a better team than they have been. They just haven't looked like they're playing to their best. Fangirl getting her membership up to 4 months. Thank you, Fangirl. By the way, if you guys want to join the membership tiers, check that join button down below. Totally optional, but it's a fun little perk. Asking what would it take to trade for Travis Konecny? A lot. It would start at the Canucks first round pick this year, which the Canucks shouldn't be trading at this point, unless they are securely in a playoff spot. And I'm saying like 5 games above 500 at some point. Quattrob saying, Canucks are playing a boring brand of hockey right now. All of our shots are taken from the point or on the outside. I think we lead the league with shots in these low danger areas. Yeah, I've noticed that. And I think we talked about it. Was it the Buffalo game that we talked about it? And we looked, I brought up the heat map, and all of the Canucks stuff was to the outside. The one from tonight isn't as bad. And I might share it here. It's actually, it looks better than I think it felt. There's a big red spot sort of in the hash marks. But yeah, I can see a lot of shots from sort of, very high up. A couple, like one from the bottom of a face-off circle, which is pretty low percentage. But definitely a lot of shots from the point, which have been fine for the Canucks. They've been converting on some of those, especially when guys like OEL and Hughes are getting pucks through. But yeah, they need more high danger chances, right? They only had 28 shots tonight. They can be a lot better. Aisha saying, I'm concerned, however, it's not even game 10 yet and our division is looking rough. This is actually a good take because it's not like the Canucks are really falling out of it yet, right? Other teams are also floundering. We see Vegas at 3-4, right? They are going to have to start winning some games and moving up. San Jose is at 4-2. They're going to fall. The only two teams that have actually been capitalizing on this in our division is Calgary and Edmonton, and San Jose, but I don't think they're going to stay up there. So it's not like the Canucks are now well outside of a playoff spot, right? They're tied with Seattle. They're slightly ahead of Vegas. They're ahead of Anaheim. They're ahead of LA. And I expect San Jose to fall. So while it has been bad, the rest of the division has been bad as well because it's really top heavy with Calgary and Edmonton, both being, both having 5 wins already. So it's not like the door is closed yet. This would have been a good opportunity for Vancouver to sort of catapult high up in the division and get some bit of a safety blanket if they were, say, 5-3, or even if they had won tonight and they were 4-3-1, they would have moved up and been right up there, around 3rd or 4th in the division and build a bit of a gap on Vegas, on Seattle, on Anaheim, down a little bit farther. But it's, yeah, we're not even 10 games in and there's still room, in the standings for sure. Let's keep scrolling here. Mark is saying, if we keep losing, how urgent does the situation get for us to start making roster moves? I'm not sure about roster moves again, because I don't know if there's a lot you can do. There's so many guys out to injury. Like I said, Sutter, Mott, Dowling, Highmore, Dickinson, just on the forward group. And the Canucks should be getting Hamonic back pretty soon, which will be a good help on the right side on the defense. I think the coaching staff is probably closer, like their seat's probably a little bit hotter than moves to the actual roster because Canucks don't have any cap space to make moves. So anything they do will have to be, we'll have to have salary going back as well. And they're kind of hamstrung, and lots of other teams probably aren't looking to make deals yet this early in the season. Keep scrolling. So how you doing? Already talking about the draft? Saying the draft is supposed to be really, really good this year. I'm hoping the draft is just deep and the Canucks will make a nice pick in the late 20s, but might not be looking too good so far there. Kurt straight up asking, do you see the Canucks making the playoffs this year? Let's run a poll. Let's drop a poll. Playoffs? Question mark? Yes or no? There's a poll in the chat here for those of you watching live. And it is asking, do you think the Canucks are going to make the playoffs this year at this point? After 8 games in, they're 3-4-1, 10% of the way through the season. Is this a playoff team? So go vote in that poll, because I am curious as to what you guys think. Right now, do I see them making the playoffs? I think it's still a toss-up because I think they're going to start playing better. I hope they're going to start playing better, but I also think the rest of the teams in the division are also going to start moving up and improving as well. Early results coming in, 65% saying no, 33 votes have been cast already. Up to 68% saying no now. And when we had asked this in Canucks After Dark, when we did our prop bets, it was a lot more optimistic. It was something like 90% thought this was going to be a playoff team. So yikes. Aisha saying we've only scored more than 2 goals 3 times this year. Offense has to be better. Absolutely. And the defense needs to be better too. Hi T asking where I got this hat. I ordered it from the Bay. It was an Olympic hat because I had a gift card. All right, we're going to end the poll there. 42 votes, 67% saying no. And I'm going to try to screenshot, or 66% saying no. I'm going to screenshot that. And I'm going to put that on Twitter to show how far we've fallen. I like this one. Debut Hunter saying, PD looks like that pool player who's half a beverage past the zone and has lost coordination. This is me in golf, okay? And if you're a golfer, anyone who's a golfer knows this. There is a sweet spot where you're swinging free at about two and a half beers, and you're swinging great. And then after that, it falls off quick. And it kind of does look like Pettersson's on that at that spot right now. We're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes here, but we'll take a little bit more. Keith saying, ask again about the playoffs when we beat the Oilers on Saturday. I like the optimism. I like it. Thank you, Hope, for getting up to 7 months as a VIP. Appreciate it. Does Pettersson look slow? Asks Terrence. He looks a step behind. I don't know if he looks slow because he's never really been that fast. As in like speed wise, but he looks like he's slow to make decisions. And that's a big part of his game. He's a very cerebral player. He's very smart. But if he's, thinking a step behind, it's not good. Any news on Brandon Sutter? Nope. Not that I've heard. Our latest update was that he still has, fatigue from basically long-term COVID symptoms. And that it's going to be a while is basically all we heard. So I wouldn't even bother hoping here for maybe a month, maybe 2, maybe 3. Kai, is it a hot take to say our power play or our second power play unit is better than our first? A lot more movement, creativity, and not always looking to make the perfect play. They're not better players, but they are playing it better. And I've talked about this a lot as well, where the first power play, and I think I recommend you guys after this, maybe go listen to the last episode of Canucks After Dark on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube/Canucks After Dark. Clay and I talked about this a lot, about how Power Play 1 is so locked into this umbrella structure where it's gain the zone, set up in the perfect umbrella, and then pass it around until you have the absolute perfect scoring chance and then take a shot. And then half the time you miss the net or the pass never gets through or things fall apart and it doesn't work. Power Play 2 goes out there and they don't have that same structure, which means half the time it fails immediately and they lose the puck. But the other half of the time, it's dangerous and it's moving around and they're getting quick passes and shots and the quick pass and a shot. And they're getting pucks on net, which the first power play is very hesitant to do. They're waiting for the absolute perfect opportunity because they're more focused on possession than they are scoring chances. I think if Power Play 1 was given the same script as Power Play 2 and they tried to play it that way, I think it would probably be pretty effective. I think we'd have a lot of times where we'd get frustrated because they'd never get set up or like something goes wrong, but we already have that. And I think that they're good enough that they can be more dynamic, less static, move around, move the puck around, skate, skate just up and down the wall. When you watch Edmonton's power play, you see Connor McDavid on the left-hand side, just doing laps, basically from the blue line to the hash marks and back. And just having speed the whole time, and the puck gets to him, and he's moving, and he gets a quick shot off. And the Canucks have the skill to do that. Brock Besser has the skill to do that. Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, they all have the skill to do that. It's just not the way they're utilizing it. And this is something we hoped would change with the new power play coach, with Newell Brown being gone. And I wonder if they just haven't had the time to implement it, or implement any changes, or if they're still going to use the exact same style, which doesn't seem to be having a great effect. Cam saying, are you surprised you haven't seen any of the Twins this year? We've seen a lot of them in Abbotsford. I see Chris Faber posting because he goes to lots of the Abbotsford practices. has a lot of they're usually at in Abbotsford at those practices. Agam saying couldn't watch the game. How was the team? Bad in the first, good in the second, met in the third, couldn't beat Martin Jones. Defense looked really bad early. That's my summary of the game. And I think we're going to wrap up there. Thank you guys very much for joining me for this Vancouver Canucks post-game show. As always, live after every game, just minutes after, except for Tuesday when I didn't show up. And I don't think I'll be doing it on this Saturday either because I'm going to the game in Abbotsford. So maybe I'll do an Abbotsford Canucks post-game show. We'll see. I might do a stream that night, maybe at 11 o'clock. So make sure you're subscribed and just watch out in your subscription feed for that and come hang out with me on Saturday night, maybe at like 11. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Shout out to our members, all the VIPs who are a part of the team. Hope and Fangirl both renewing tonight. Thank you guys very much. If you want to become a member, click the join button down below, hit subscribe, hit like, follow me on Twitter, do all the links down in the description. You guys know the deal. And shout out to Adam and Lucas, two of our higher tier members. I appreciate it a lot. And I will see you guys on Saturday.